MAGA Republican Congress members were stunned as Democrats hijacked a Rules Committee hearing. The MAGA Republicans were trying to rush through their reconciliation bill to give billions and more dollars to the catastrophic and unlawful war in Iran. And Democratic Congress members like Jim McGovern and Democratic Congress member Joe Neguse started cross-examining these MAGA Republican Congress members and making them justify their horrific actions on live TV. You see, in the Rules Committee, the members from the party, in this case, the MAGA Republicans, who are bringing the rules to the floor, who are bringing the bills to the floor, in this case, a reconciliation bill. And then there was a related inside trading bill in Congress, which was actually done to try to stifle real legislation to prevent Congress members from inside trading. I'll get to that in a moment. But the Republican Congress members who are bringing the legislation, who are bringing the rules, they have to justify what they're bringing in a Rules Committee. And so it could sometimes or usually be boring and tedious, but the Democrats basically did like a sneak attack and they said, all right, Congress member Arrington, that's the MAGA Republican Congress member, we've got questions for you. Or in the case of Democratic Congress member Neguse, Congress member Style, let's talk about your piece of legislation right here, and I'm going to try to expose it. It was brilliant cross-examination. So let me show you what took place first, where you had Democratic Congress member McGovern. Here was his exchange with Congress member Arrington, the MAGA Republican, who's trying to push through this truly horrific and disastrous reconciliation bill and this legislation to give the Defense Department, to give Hexeth like so billions and billions and billions of dollars more for this catastrophic war when they already got got trillions of dollars, got over $1 trillion last year. What are we doing right here? So first, Democratic Congress member McGovern begins by looking at the Republicans and saying, you control every branch of government and the Supreme Court, yet you're here whining? You're whining? What are you doing right now? Watch this. Let's play it.
Let me just say, I love you Republicans. You don't take responsibility for anything. I mean, you control the House, you control the Senate, you control the White House. I think you control the Supreme Court, and nothing is your responsibility. Boy, it must be nice to live that way. And I'll just say one thing. When you guys want to get things done, I mean, you do. When you wanted tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, I mean, you shoved that through. Added $4.7 trillion to the debt. You got that through. I wish we could have stopped it, but you got it through. When you wanted to cut Medicaid by $1 trillion, you did it in a nanosecond. SNAP by $200 billion. You're going to increase hunger in this country. I mean, so the idea that, this idea that somehow you can't get anything done, yeah, you do. The stuff you get done, unfortunately, is bad for the American people. But everything is somebody else's fault. It's never your fault.
And then Democratic Congressmember McGovern, before really leaning in on the question, is just like, and then you all sit back, you pathetic MAGA Republicans, while Donald Trump engages in rampant corruption and crimes in clear and present view that would make what Richard Nixon did look nothing compared to what Donald Trump does on any given day. And all you MAGA Republicans do is just sit there, complicit. You're okay with that. Shame on you. Watch Congressman McGovern go to work. Here, play this clip.
And don't even get me going on corruption or on fraud or waste or abuse. I'm looking at what's happening in the White House right now and the silence of the entire Republican conference. I mean, that is complicity. That is complicity. And history will record that you were silent as this president ripped off the American people. I've never seen anything like it. It makes Richard Nixon look like a Boy Scout.
And then he gets into the cross-examination of the MAGA Republican Congress member Arrington. Now remember, in these Rules Committee, if you're like, why is he cross-examining the Republican Congress member? Because the Republicans who are putting forward the legislation, they have to advance it through the Rules Committee, and you're able to ask them questions. So Congressmember McGovern was not going to just let this just go by and just check the box. No, Congressmember McGovern's like, I remember you and the MAGA Republicans talking about the debt, and you were debt hawks, and you were saying that, Biden was bad and Democrats were running up the debt. Like, you all realize that Donald Trump has basically added most of the debt that the country has right now. And just this year alone, Trump has added over $3.3 trillion. So what do you say about that? Watch the MAGA Republican Congress member squirm. Here, play this clip.
But Chairman Arrington, in 2024, you came before this committee and you said, quote, "At a time when our national debt is approaching $35 trillion, we are adding almost $8 billion to the debt every day, and we pay 62 cents on every dollar just to service the debt. We must lead Congress toward a path of fiscal responsibility. The trajectory is unsustainable and is arguably the biggest threat facing our nation," end quote. You ended your remarks by saying, and I quote, "Not paying for our spending is not only irresponsible, it is irrational. We cannot continue to thrust the costs of things we think are important onto the backs of our kids and grandkids," end quote. Chairman Arrington, do you still believe that our debt is one of the biggest threats facing our nation?
I do.
So, Chairman Arrington, can you affirm the basic fact that since January 20th, 2025, since President Trump and the Republicans assumed full control of government, the national debt has increased by $3.3 trillion from $36.2 trillion to $39.5 trillion?
It's a misleading stat because the economy has grown with the cuts that we made on waste, fraud, and abuse. In total, for the first time in a decade, the deficit to GDP has gone down under Republican leadership and this president's watch.
You disagree with the figure?
The CBO, that's a direct quote from the CBO.
Yeah, you disagree with that our debt went from 36.2 to 39.5? Because I think that's
we have
pretty clear.
We have liabilities in Social Security, Medicare. We have liabilities across the board that are outpacing
Mr. McGarvey,
our sources of revenue.
Those are accurate numbers?
Yes. And in fact, another stat we can look at, the debt of this country from George Washington through Bill Clinton was about $5.7 trillion. The debt from George W. Bush and Donald Trump alone is nearly double that.
Chairman Arrington, isn't it true that you and everybody on the Republican side here voted in favor of a Republican reconciliation bill that is projected to add $4.7 trillion to our nation's debt over the next decade?
Not true.
Another $70 billion that provided funding for ICE and CBP?
The ICE and CBP was simply a replacement of what would have been discretionary funding for ICE and CBP when every Democrat voted to defund it.
Did you vote for that?
Of course, I wouldn't defund ICE and CBP.
Right.
That's
Arrington,
yes, sir.
Can you confirm that the plain text of the budget resolution before us right now instructs committees to propose legislation that would increase the deficit by as much as $95 billion with no requirement that it be paid for?
Mr. McGovern, ever since I've been here, and probably for 100 years, when we are in conflict and our military needs supplemental resourcing to keep our troops safe, we have never offset it. And the $200 billion that you and your colleagues gave to Ukraine, that was not offset. So I don't expect we should do this any differently.
Yeah, but you said, I go back to not paying for our spending is not only irresponsible, it's irrational.
I
can
agree.
Continue to thrust the cost of things that we think are important onto the backs of our kids and our grandkids.
That's correct.
The question is, how can you come before the committee and advocate for spending tens of billions more taxpayer dollars on top of the trillions that you have already added to the deficit while not requiring any of this?
It's a fair question.
Not just the military stuff,
Yeah.
and other stuff. Why that none of it is paid for?
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
And I think we have to ask ourselves as a Congress why we provide emergency funding, supplemental appropriations for emergencies, because those emergencies require expeditious action, A, and B, if we don't act, we'll spend a lot more money. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't budget for emergencies. We need to do a better job of that across the board.
Was it an emergency to give tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires? Because that was not paid for either.
It was, in fact.
Okay, all right. Well,
in fact.
I'm glad. So we just have a disagreement. You think an emergency is making sure that millionaires and billionaires get tax cuts, big corporations? I just disagree with that. That's a fundamental values question.
I didn't say that, just for the record.
Right.
Although some, after a 21% inflation tax, would have said a 22% tax hike would be an emergency for their families.
Yeah.
And then Democratic Congressmember McGovern's like, okay, I want to understand, you truly think that the Defense Department, that Pete Hegseth should be getting billions and billions and billions of dollars more? We gave him $1.1 trillion last year. And just because Trump and Hegseth bankrupting this whole thing, bankrupting our country, y'all didn't even pass it. You aren't even invoking your rights in Congress to stop Donald Trump from doing this unlawful and catastrophic war. You just want to give him a blank check? While American troops are dying, while more war crimes are being committed as well? You know, what the hell's going on? Here, play this clip.
Your budget resolution instructs the Armed Services Committee to increase the deficit by as much as $60 billion in order to use taxpayer dollars to cover more of the cost of the president's war in Iran. Are you aware that Republicans gave the Department of Defense an extra $150 billion last July?
Yes.
And according to the Trump administration's own numbers, more than half of that money, $75.7 billion, has yet to be spent or even obligated?
I know that we gave $150 billion to the defense of our country.
Right. So given that you've said that our nation's debt is such an existential crisis,
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree that it is irresponsible to spend another $60 billion in taxpayer dollars on Trump's war when you already have $75 billion available?
No, sir, because we were so in the hole after 4 years of a president that didn't have not just regard for our readiness, but for what our troops were focused on in terms of war fighting. That first $100 billion was to make up for 4 years. Thank God we put that additional monies to prepare for.
$75 billion that hasn't even been obligated yet.
I've got some breaking news I want to share with you, so let me interrupt for just a minute. Trump just posted a rant defending data centers right after Kathy Hochul signed the nation's first ever statewide data center moratorium. This post may as well have been written by a data center itself. He called them liquid gold, bashed Hochul as political, and claimed that these companies pay for their own water and power. Now, let's just fact check this in real time. Hochul's order pauses new permits for large data centers for up to a year. It's not a permanent ban, so that New York can build real protections for ratepayers, the grid, and water supply before more of these facilities get built. Her response to Trump was blunt. She said, quote, "We hit pause because the communities powering AI should share in its success." And now here's what Trump left out. Nationally, the grid operator serving 13 states found that data centers caused 63% of last year's massive spike in power costs. That's $9.3 billion dumped onto ratepayers, not tech companies. Capacity prices in that region jumped 833% in a single year. Some families are already paying an extra $18 a month just from data center demand. And separately, Trump's own energy policies have already cost the average household over $2,000. With electricity bills up 18% since he took office. Then there's water. A single large data center can drink up to 5 million gallons a day. And in Texas alone, a state that Trump name-checked in that post, data centers are projected to use nearly 400 billion gallons of water a year by 2030. So when Trump says that data centers are a win for everyone, ask the person paying the electric bill. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think of data centers and their impact on the environment and your bills? Do you want to see data centers in your community? What are your thoughts on the Trump administration's climate policy? Sound off right now in the comments below and make your voices heard. Okay, Ben, back to you.
Then you have Congressmember McGovern says, look, while you're all out there wanting trillions of dollars to go to Pete Hegseth to commit more war crimes and to run the American economy into the ground, in your reconciliation bill, in what you're doing right here, where's there anything about the cost of living? And McGovern says, I know you guys, I know you MAGAs don't do town halls. McGovern says, I do town halls. I do town halls every time I'm back in my district. And you know what everybody says to me? I can't afford anything. So what are you doing here to address that? Nope. Instead, you're giving taxpayer dollars or you're running up the debt in order to fund the military industrial complex to commit more war crimes in Iran while Iran responds by destroying American military bases and killing our troops because the Trump regime has our troops just sitting there. Then they engage in the war crime, expect no response. And we don't even have the interceptors. All our munitions are gone. Here, play this clip.
Why does this budget resolution not include anything to bring down costs? I mean, you don't have to just take my word for it. On July 15th, a Republican congresswoman from South Carolina described your budget as, quote, $95 billion in new deficit spending, no offsets, and not one provision to lower the cost of living, end quote. So the question is, why doesn't your resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would, for example, lower health care costs or help people who have lost their health care coverage regain it?
I would say that the first step in unwinding the cost of living crisis that was created by the failed policies of your party was to stop the wild, reckless, unbridled spending. This administration continues, by the way, a whole of government assault on fraud, not on domestic energy producers, but on fraud. And we cut, like I said, $1.6 trillion in waste. We put pro-growth policies that gave us a 3.8 and a 4.3 growth rates before you shut the government down.
It sounds like we're back to the old, let's blame Joe Biden. Well, why doesn't your resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would lower Americans' child care costs? Or why doesn't the resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would lower Americans' housing or rent costs? Or why doesn't your resolution instruct any committee to propose legislation that would lower gas prices for Americans' energy bills? I mean, this is kind of the problem in a nutshell, and I'll close with this. You know, when it comes to war and tax cuts for wealthy and big corporations, you guys trip over yourselves to spend tax dollars with no offsets. This is your MO. But when it comes to helping American families, Republicans think it would be wasteful spending. I got to tell you, I still do in-person town halls. I don't know about you, but I do. And all people want to talk about is the high cost of living. They can't afford their rents, can't afford to buy homes. Childcare costs are out of control. Healthcare costs are out of control. They want to know, why the hell aren't we focused in on that? And instead, we're focused in on, giving the well-off and the well-connected even more. I think people have had it. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're going to see every Democrat oppose this. And I hope some Republicans who care about fiscal responsibility will oppose it as well.
Now, I got to hand it to Democratic Congress member Joe Neguse from the great state of Colorado. A true litigator, a true authentic cross-examiner. Neguse is the best. Now, here he is cross-examining MAGA Republican Congress member Brian Stahl. And this MAGA Republican Congress member is trying to advance what he claims is a bill that would stop congressional insider trading, except what the bill really is doing is protecting the MAGA Republican Congress members, but pretending to the American public that the Republicans did something. Let me explain. What the legislation that these MAGAs want says that members of Congress would be banned from buying individual stocks based on their insider knowledge. They'll be banned from buying, but there's no ban on selling. There's also no ban on predictive markets, buying, and or buying or placing bets on predictive markets. And then there's also no ban on buying industry-wide mutual funds or exchange-traded funds. So if you're in the intelligence community and you may find out something about the war that could impact the price of oil, you can still buy an exchange-traded fund that may be about the oil industry or about semiconductor chips or about the military. So you can still do that. And so it's just a ban on individual traded stocks. So Neguse is like, what the hell is this? What are you doing here? Watch him cross-examine this MAGA and watch the MAGA squirm. Here, play this clip.
Chairman Stahl, so the name of your bill is the Stop Insider Trading Act, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You think that's an accurate description of the bill?
Yeah.
Okay. What does trading mean to you?
The buying and selling for profit.
The buying and selling for profit. I couldn't agree with you more. Webster's dictionary defines it as the business of buying and selling. This bill, as you said, bans the buying of individual shares of stock, right?
That's correct.
It does not ban the selling.
It reforms the selling, of course.
It does
makes
not
changes.
ban the selling, right? You're allowed to sell as much stock as you would like as a member of Congress under this bill. Is that wrong?
I think it's insufficient to describe it that way, that what you said is accurate but misleading.
It is accurate, yes.
But misleading.
Correct. Yes, it is accurate.
Accurate but misleading,
So let's say
yes.
there's a Republican senator who decides that they're going to sell millions of dollars of stock the week before the COVID-19 pandemic begins in earnest. That's legal under your bill, right?
Of course, they would have provided a minimum of 7 days advance
Correct.
notice. So I'm
And
not
that would
sure
be
that you
legal.
could do that in the timeline you just proposed.
And that would be legal under this. This isn't a hypothetical. A Republican senator, 7, 8 days before, 9 days before the COVID-19 pandemic began in earnest, sold millions of dollars of stock. Under this bill, that would not be illegal, right?
But of course, they would provide notice. That's,
Yes, I
that's the part that you don't want to discuss.
I understand the notice, but here's what I don't understand why
So-
you don't just, hold on, I'll give you a chance to explain this. You could defend it on the merits. You've clearly decided that the buying of stock, right, is a practice that you don't believe should be permitted by members of Congress. I agree.
Okay.
But for some reason, you've decided that the sale of stocks, individual stocks, is completely fine, but for the notice requirements that you've now imposed in this bill. And I don't quite understand that disconnect, because there are many bills that have been introduced, including a bill I introduced 7 years ago with Chip Roy and other members of this body that has 140 co-sponsors on it, that would ensure that the sale and the purchase of stocks is banned. And this bill does not do that.
And then finally, you'll see, this is, I think, every Congress member who is asking questions at hearings should truly watch what Congressmember Neguse does here, because he doesn't listen to himself speak. He's not ranting. I wish there was more cross-examination like this when Todd Blanche was in front of the Senate, because this is how it's done. Watch how he asks short questions, follows up, repeats. Watch what Congressmember Neguse does right here. Let's play this clip.
Make sure I'm understanding, as a technical matter, the ambit of this bill. Under this bill, can you purchase crypto holdings?
It makes no changes to the House rules in that regard.
So you can't or you can?
It makes no changes in this regard.
I don't, is it allowed
House
now?
rules still apply. You today are allowed to buy
Okay,
crypto
so
if
that's
you
all I'm
so
asking.
chose.
It's not a trick question. You're allowed to.
That's,
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Individual placements, because someone else referenced this previously, that there, can you do individual purchase of individual placements of stock under this?
Individual shares of stock, no.
Individual shares, no. Private placements, yes.
The current House rules would apply.
Correct. Okay.
Right.
So if it's easier, I'll frame it that way. I'll use
Yeah, current House rules apply.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
But what I want to make clear to people who are listening is
Sure.
there are significant restrictions in place under House rules. I wouldn't want somebody to walk away and think
Fine.
that no other rules apply.
Okay.
I
let
want to
me
make
frame
sure
it.
that they're clear that
Let's
current
use
House
your
rules
language.
would apply.
Let's use your language.
Yeah, I think it's more accurate.
Under current House rules, members of Congress can buy crypto holdings, and under your bill, that does not change, right?
There's no change.
Okay,
made.
and under current House rules, members of Congress can buy stocks through private placements. And under your bill, that does not change, right?
No change.
Okay, and under current House rules, members of Congress can buy stocks, can buy industry-specific mutual funds, right?
That's accurate.
And that does not change under your bill.
Does not change.
Okay, and under current House rules, members of Congress can buy bonds, right? Mm-hmm. And under your bill, that does not change.
Still buy bonds.
And there are countless other pieces of legislation that members of Congress have introduced, myself included, that would ban all of what I just described. That is the point. I would say, with respect to Mr. Morelli's comment about the prediction markets, I do not understand, and perhaps you can illuminate this for me. The House Administration Committee has jurisdiction over member participation in prediction markets, right?
That's accurate.
Okay, you're the chair.
Along with others, but yes.
But
We're one
you've
of
got
them.
principal jurisdiction.
Yes, yes.
You're in charge. Okay. 4 months ago, the United States Senate, on a bipartisan basis, on a voice vote, took action and said, you know what? No senator in this body is allowed to make bets on prediction markets. Every Republican, every Democrat agreed to it. Why can't we?
We have moved forward legislation, the Committee and House Administration on this topic.
Let's
I look
do it
forward
today.
to. I'd be.
Why can't we? I'm saying this happened in April.
No,
We could do a one-page
yeah.
resolution. We could just literally cut and paste the Senate resolution, and we could pass
Yeah.
it tomorrow. Will you help us with that?
Yeah, so I've been supportive of making restrictions in the prediction market space.
Why isn't it in this bill?
We have two different pieces of legislation. We moved through, obviously, prediction markets are reasonably new and novel technology available to American people.
It took the Senate a day. It's a one-page resolution. It literally is a paragraph. It just says members of the Senate are banned from participating in prediction.
I'm fully supportive of my legislation moving forward, if that's the question.
No, the question is, well, I guess I'll follow with Mr. Morelli, and maybe, Mr. Morelli, I would encourage, I know you've been pushing on this, but maybe we can just write a one-page resolution. We'll just take the Senate resolution, go to the floor this week, and apparently, according to Mr. Stile, that would meet with his approval. All right, am I wrong? Is that not something that you all have been able to debate in the committee? Mr. Morelli.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. We can do by resolution and have it apply to House members and House family members of families of House members, dependents, and do just exactly what the Senate did. The alternative is to do it in a bill which isn't even in front of us for reasons that completely escape my understanding. There should be a provision in this bill, as bad as this bill is. How would you not include the prediction markets? But yes, to your point, we can do a resolution. Doesn't have to pass the Senate. Doesn't have to have the president sign it. We can do a resolution pertaining simply to the House. We should do that today.
I couldn't agree more, and I would hope that the majority Republican House would perhaps emulate what your colleagues in the upper chamber did under John Thune and simply say, instead of the delay and the dilatory tactics and everything else, we're just going to ban it.
Well, there you have it, folks. Democrats taking control of that Rules Committee hearing. What do you think? What do you think, folks? WTF, America. Pre-order right now. That's the MeidasTouch book. Comes out in October, but it really helps if you do the pre-order now and don't wait until October. So I think there's a QR code here. Can you please put in the comments WTF if you got the book, if you pre-ordered the book? I dedicated it to you, the Meidas Mighty. I know you'll love it. We're spending a lot of time on it. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks for watching.
Hey, if you want the full story, how democracy got here and how we take it back, pre-order our new book, WTF America, today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description. Let's do this.